Welcome to the Chuck Shoe Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I've got a great guest for you today, Anthony Corder, the singer of Tora Tora. I actually interviewed the guitarist from Tora Tora, Keith Douglas. That was actually one of my first episodes of this show, so you can check that out if you're a big Tora Tora fan. If you don't know who Tora Tora is, well, you'll definitely learn from either listening to that other episode or this one. But they were a pretty big band back in the late 80s, early 90s. They had like 5 videos on MTV. They had a song on the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure soundtrack. They toured with LA Guns, Dangerous Toys, The Cult, Warrant, Kicks, all sorts of other bands too. It's interesting. Later in the mid 90s, when the band started to decline and the grunge kind of took over, they had actually had Alice in Chains open up for them. They had hung out with Soundgarden and Chris Cornell, and so it's just the way the rock scene kind of changed. But Anthony's a great guy. You'll hear a lot about the history of the band and his life. His life kind of took an interesting turn after the band kind of ended. He became a teacher, started doing other stuff, worked at a record label. But then the band is actually back together as of about 12 years ago. And they've actually put out a new album, Bastards of Beale, and as well as a new Unplugged EP, acoustic. It's like 5 songs. So check both of those out, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Anthony Corder. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, Chuck. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for calling me. I'm glad that we're able to reschedule.
Man, gosh, thank you so much. We had just the most unexpected news last week. A really close friend of mine, a promoter in Memphis, passed away, and it was just, we were the same age. We grew up together. I started playing, and he started promoting about the same time, and it was just,
wow, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Crazy, man.
So it was unexpected.
It was just crazy. It was really unexpected. I mean, we've done so many shows together, and he created so many opportunities for the band. Just, he was, had 2 venues, 2 sheds, one in northern Mississippi right across the line from Memphis, and then one over in Arkansas. And if he ever got wind of something that was coming along that was in our, wheelhouse, he would say, "Hey, you want to come down?" And, we had kind of pulled back and we're only doing a few shows, while we're raising our families and stuff.
Yeah.
But he would be, "This is going to be a good one." It's not like a Leonard Skinner show or a White Snake or, Brett Michaels or whatever. He'd be like, "Hey, you want to come jump on this come make some good money and jump out in front of a big audience." And he was just really great.
So it sounds like he was an advocate for your band then.
Oh yeah. He was an advocate, and he was just outside of just the music industry. We became, really close friends just as we were growing older and being in the, we had some really long talks. He was a really big resource to me as far as, I moved to Nashville and worked for the record labels. I worked in music publishing. I worked as a teacher, like at Belmont University, and now I'm over at SAE Institute as their entertainment business program chair. So he was somebody I could call on, if I had a question or if I wanted him to chime in on some topic I was talking about at school or something. And so he always offered himself up, And but listen, man, he had a wonderful life, and the celebration of his life the other day was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was like out of a movie, man. They had a full production where they had people running sound and coming out and setting mics up.
Wow.
He came in a road case, like, down the aisle, and the pallbearers came in, and they brought the things that he would have in his office. So his hats, they brought a baseball bat, they brought a little thing of Cokes and a little pint of whiskey. And his saying was, "I never enter a crowded room if I ain't making $1." So everybody walked up there, left a couple of bucks on top of his case. And it was just crazy. It was crazy, but it meant the world to me that they thought of me to speak. I think his family was just so distraught. His wife, and he had 2 brothers, and I have another friend that's a booking agent, and he called me together, and he just said, "Man, they just won't be able to hold it together. We just was wondering if you might want to say a few words." And I was like, "Oh, are you kidding? I'd love to do that."
So he worked with not
hard.
just your band, but other bands as well?
Yeah, he was a promoter in Memphis. He grew up in northern Mississippi. He started out down at Ole Miss, which is about maybe an hour outside of Memphis. And he worked with a bunch of people. He was kind of growing up. He was my age, but he started really getting in promoting and stuff around the time like Dave Matthews and people like that were breaking. He had done some shows and stuff with them. But our careers kind of ran parallel, so we kept bumping into each other all the time, and just through different people. And he made trips up here to Nashville to, meet with people and talk to record labels and all that kind of stuff. So I would see him, from time to time, and get to spend time together up here and then down in Memphis. Spent a lot of time there.
So you had that to deal with, and then obviously the coronavirus is happening, and then there was also a hurricane in Nashville right before the coronavirus happened. I think a lot of people forgot about that. So you've had a lot to deal with over the last few months then. Yeah,
it was a tornado, and it hit some big areas, and the people here were just trying to recover from that, and then all of a sudden it was like, we're going to close everything for a minute, make sure everybody's healthy and safe. And
so have they started the rebuild down there at all, or has that been put off?
They did.
Okay.
It mainly hit East Nashville, which is kind of like a real creative part of town. A lot of musicians and people kind of live in that area. There's a lot of music. It's kind of like a midtown area, older homes kind of area that have stoops and things like that. And so they're on the mend over there. It was a lot of rebuilding, but Nashville always comes together. That's one thing great about the community. People come together and help each other. And I've been up here about 15 years, so I can't even believe I'm saying that, but it's just been an amazing experience. It's a lot of creative people, and I've met a lot of different people in different areas of the entertainment industry. It's got, I guess, infrastructure, is what it is.
Sure.
It's just got a lot of managers and publishing companies and the performing rights organizations and all that. So
right, but you actually grew up you actually grew up in Memphis, right? I mean, and that's where the band was formed.
Yeah, we went to high school together. Mm-hmm. So Patrick and I, the bass player, and I went to the same high school, and then Keith and John went to the same high school. And actually, Patrick and Keith have known each other since they were 8 or 10 years old. So they've known each other
they had another band,
lives.
Lycanthrope, that was kind of like a Judas Priest, Iron Maiden thing or something.
Man, you've done your homework. They did.
Yeah.
They did do that. And that was before I knew them. So it was kind of like double two guitars. They were big fans of like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. Keith's a huge Randy Rhoads fan. That was kind of like his inspiration when he was growing up.
Great guitar player.
And of course we loved all the classic stuff, the Zeppelins and Bad Companies and Cheap Trick and all those kind of people. And but yeah, man, I was pretty intimidated meeting them because I was a couple of years younger than them, and so they were out of school. I was like going into 11th grade, I think, and I had kind of been knocking around with a couple of kind of neighborhood bands. I had a friend that was tearing the strings off his guitar, and I met him, and my family was real musical growing up, and so I kind of just thought everybody was into music. So when I met him, I was like, oh man, this is cool. We kind of found a bond, and but he was listening to a bunch of stuff, a bunch of Rat and Dokken and Bon Jovi, and he was in there doing the shredding licks and stuff on his guitar, and we kind of started putting something together. And he kind of had a small drum kit. It was like a snare, hi-hat, bass drum, cymbal, I think is what it was. But anyway, I was kind of knocking around that, and he goes, man, we want to write our own songs. We need somebody to sing. And so I said, well, man, I'll just start singing over the drums, And we started writing, and then the next thing I knew, we had kind of played a little bit out, for some little parties, house parties and stuff. And Patrick just had heard about me. I think we might have had done something at school or something, and he just approached me and said, hey, we're getting ready to put the band together, and was wondering if you want to come audition. And this was funny, man. This is like straight out of a movie. We were like at the mall or something, and he came up to me and had bumped into me. And I was like, yeah, I want to go. And then after I said, yeah, I was excited when I said yes. And then I started getting really nervous. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? I don't know anything or anybody. But anyway, I went over there and they were like set up at Patrick's house in his living room. And John had rototoms, you know, had a huge set of drums. And Keith had 2 amps set up in the room in stereo. And they were doing like 2112, like dun, 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 dun. And it bounced back and forth between the amps, you know, and everything. He had it all set up with his
songs. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we were just totally, you know, I was blown away. I was like, oh, they're on like a different level than I am. I showed up with an acoustic. You know, my family was real acoustic oriented, and they played all kind of.
Your mom was musical. She played the piano and sang, right? Is that?
Yes, man. She did. My aunt and uncle played guitar, and my aunt sang. They all kind of did like this family harmony stuff going on. It's just kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, but I thought everybody's family did this. I didn't realize that for as far back as I could remember, listen to, you know, Mississippi John Hurt records, and we listened to Ray Charles, and they listened to gospel music and rock and roll. They listened to, you know, Skinner and Foreigner in Boston and James Taylor and Neil Young, all these people they were turning me on to. And I thought everybody's family was doing that. So when my friends would come over, they would just freak. My aunt's one of the best singers I've ever heard in my life. But I was like, oh man, they do that all the time. Let's sneak off and go smoke a cigarette or something, you know? And, you know, when you're a little kid, and then as I got older, I started realizing, I was like, hey man, this actually isn't the norm. Like, this is like something really unique. And it really made me realize how much of an influence and an impact on my life that they had, just from inspiring me, you know, about music and turning me on to just the love of it and everything. And so anyway, I had shown up over at their house with like an acoustic, you know, for the Tora Tora thing. And I was like, man, I'm going to play like Desperado or something from the Eagles, you know, and do my singer-songwriter thing. And I don't know, I played like half of it or something. And Keith and them go, man, that's cool, but you know Toys and Attic? Or I Want You to Want Me, or, you know, Can't Get Enough of Your Love. And they started just naming off. I don't know, they had 10 or 12. I think they did Walk This Way and something else. And I didn't know all the words. I mean, I knew the songs, but I was like, I think I can. And Toys and Attic, I was like, man, I don't know what he's saying. You know, I mean, back then we had to like listen to the record and try to figure it out.
They didn't have the lyrics.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have any prep and they just kind of threw me on the spot. But as soon as we all started playing and singing together, we were like, man, there's some kind of chemistry or something that was where we said, man, this is kind of cool.
Did you beat out other singers? So did they have other singers that they auditioned, or?
They never told me. I don't know. I think when we did it, I think that was, I don't know who had been there or if they had talked to other people, but I think we went like straight into, you know, let's throw a party.
Yeah. So then, then you guys originally called yourselves Free Beer, right? But then you picked Tora Tora off a list of like 60 or 70 names. And then, you know, I heard this story. I think I talked to Keith when I interviewed him about how his dad owned like a glue factory, and you guys basically set up a club in the factory with the barrels, and you had a PA system, and you even showcased for the record labels there, and you had Ole Miss football players running security. Now I also heard you had like kind of like a VIP section. Did you have any VIPs that came in to these shows?
Oh man, yeah, we had great times. It was just we weren't thinking of it at the time, but we were very entrepreneurial thinkers.
For sure.
Keith really was the guitar player. He was business savvy. You know, he thought about it. There was actually 2 of those factories. One was outside of town that was kind of closer to our area where we were living, that we used to rehearse at when we very first started. That's when we were playing the old, you know, cover songs and all that kind of stuff. We were just kind of getting to know each other, and I was screaming in a microphone trying to, you know, figure out what I was doing. But as we got a little more savvy and stuff, Keith's dad had a space he was renting, and it was a big empty warehouse that was in the middle of town. It was right next to the Mid-South Coliseum where all the concerts would happen. And I mean, Keith and them saw everybody, Van Halen, AC/DC, all those concerts, their first concerts, they saw at this building. And we could see it, you know, when you stand out of the front of our warehouse, you could look at it. But his dad was using that for a storage space for these 55-gallon drums. And so Keith asked if we could move from the place the actual workplace, physical workplace, to over to that storage place. And his dad was like, yeah, you can, go over there. I'll give you a key. And he was he was really instrumental in us becoming successful. His dad invested in us, helped us get the gear and stuff at the very beginning, because he just knew that it was something that we wanted to do together. And he kind of was keeping some kind of tab on what we were up to. But when we moved in there, all those barrels were kind of spaced out around in there, and we got to look around, and Keith goes, man, let's push all these things to one end of this place. And we threw some plywood on top of it and hung some black, like, garbage bag material off the front. And all of a sudden we had like a stage. It was, awesome. A 55-gallon drum turned up on the side, and we were high enough up in the air, and we threw the PA on there. And we built like these Tora Tora letters that were kind of out of 2x4s that kind of looked like the Kiss letters, and covered them in glitter. We glued glitter to them. And at the time we weren't thinking, man, if those things would have ever fallen, they would have taken somebody out. I mean, they were so heavy. But at the time we were so excited. We're like, hang them up in the ceiling, or whatever. It's going to look awesome. Oh. And I don't even know how we secured them or anything. But anyway, we threw these crazy parties, man. We became friends with, there was a DJ at the time in Memphis. His name was Malcolm Riker, and he did a locals only show. And he did it on Friday nights, and it was like this coveted spot that everybody, the scene in Memphis at the time was insane. It was crazy. It was a bunch of young kids. We were all kind of about the same age, and everybody was playing music. Man, I guess it had kind of overflowed out of the West Coast. Like, everybody was listening and watching and hearing about, music and what was going on with the scene out there, and how they had a strip. And Beale Street's like a real, touristy part of Memphis, with a bunch of clubs and all that kind of stuff on it. And there was one guy that was in town, a guy named Mike Glenn. He had a theater that would hold about 1,000 people. And he teamed up with the radio station, and they used to do this Tuesday night jam. It was sponsored by a music store, and they put a bunch of a back line on stage, a bunch of equipment and stuff. And you could jump on stage and play 3 songs or 15 minutes. And if you went over 15 minutes, they unplugged you or just pulled you off stage or whatever.
Jeez.
And so all the kids, that was an all ages event. They would advertise it on the radio, talk to people, and it was a place where underage kids could go and see music, because most of the other stuff was bars, and we were all high school kids. You couldn't really get in unless you snuck in somewhere or something. And so those two guys kind of helped get that scene going.
So how many people show up for these concerts in the warehouse?
Man, I don't know. I would guess between 300 and 400 people, probably.
Wow.
It was nuts. Listen, it would get to capacity, and we would open the door. Once we filled the whole building up and people had paid to come in, we would open the bay door of the warehouse, and people would just sit in the parking lot on their cars, like the hoods of their cars. They were throwing Frisbees. They brought lawn chairs. They ordered pizzas.
So
people
awesome.
were just out there. It was.
Did you make a lot of money off of that? I mean, 300 or 400, even if you charge $5 a head, I mean, that's a pretty big chunk of change.
We did make money. We would pay the bouncer guys, and then we would always, the next day, we would throw some kind of cookout. Like, we'd make enough to like cook food for everybody. And, I don't think we were like going to the bank or anything, but we spent a lot, and we made a lot, but we spent a lot putting the shows on and trying to advertise and things like that. And, but it was really fun because it was super organic. Like, it gave the kids a place to go that weren't old enough to go see music. And it was in our practice room. So it was kind of we got to be the master of ceremonies or whatever, and get up and just tell everybody, do anything you want to, just don't get hurt. Nobody can.
Did you have other bands open for you or anything? Or
we only did one time. We did a Halloween one, the very first thing we did, and we did it with another band, and it was awesome. It was killer. But every time after that, we just did the whole night ourselves. Wow. We're just like, we want to just party and hang out, and then we'll jump up and play when we want to. And
so then
it was kind of
and then you ended up winning a battle of the bands, and that's how you got the studio time, right? And then is that where you recorded a demo? Yeah.
We were working on the demo when we won the competition. We started out, there was a guy named Steve Howe. He had a place called Powerhouse Studios, a studio behind his house. And he was the first engineer producer that we'd ever worked with. And he was the guy that kind of brought us in and said, you guys got to get your groove. And we were like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, it sounds like everybody in here is doing a solo. You know, you got to let's match the bass drum and the bass together. And let's, you know, he started sitting us down, just giving us the fundamentals of music. We didn't know. We all played by ear, and we just jumped in and started writing our own songs. We were kind of butchering the cover songs, so we said, man, let's just write our own, and then people won't know if we're playing them good or bad or whatever. We can just do it how we want to.
Right.
And it was just so fun. But he was a real like teacher kind of guy. He took his time with us, and we started cutting a few songs with him. And then we won that battle of bands, and we got an opportunity to go into Ardent Studios, which is, I don't know if your listeners know about Ardent Studios, but if you don't know it, it's Ardent, Ardent Studios in Memphis. It's really famous. There was a guy named John Fry that started the studio, and he became kind of a father figure in our band. We met him because there was an engineer, Paul Eversole. We won the recording time, and Paul was close to our age, and he just happened to be the guy that was on the clock the day that we were coming in the studio, and we met him, and we started working on some songs with him, and he ended up approaching us after he worked with us on some recording sessions and said, hey, man, I would like to introduce y'all to the owner of the studio. Would y'all consider maybe doing a production deal with us so we can do some recordings with you and maybe shop you? And so through knowing Paul, he introduced us to John, and John was really famous for working on, I don't know if you know this band, Big Star. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Okay, so you need to look them up. They were kind of a critical success. They were signed to Stax Records out of Memphis. So for your listeners that don't know that was all the soul music that came out. Otis Redding, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas, Isaac Hayes, all those people. And I mean, it was one of the biggest businesses in the United States. It was Stax and Motown were kind of battling it out in the soul category. And it was a black owned and operated company, which was amazing. And they were hiring all these people out of Memphis and created a ton of jobs. And, but anyway, John Fry had started the studio in at his family home, and he ended up moving it into Midtown Memphis. He started it when he was 14, when he was in high school. And, but when he was older, like 20, he moved out to this place. I think he was 20. I'm not sure. But what he did, he was so smart. He bought the equipment, the same recording equipment that was in Stax. He had the same board and all that. And so his equipment and his tape machines, and they matched. So Stax was so successful, he got the overflow. Their studios would get busy, and he would gather. And what was really awesome that we weren't thinking about at the time is through that cross-pollination kind of thing, the producers and stuff were coming over to his studio, and they were teaching these other engineers the miking techniques, the equipment they were using. So he really educated the engineers and stuff that were working with, and they were all young. They were learning from, different older guys that had experience and stuff. So it was really cool. And John was always about educating yourself. He was all about technology. Because, I mean, when they came along, if they didn't have something, they had to build it. They'd have to go and solder the wires together and come up with the stuff. And he was always about following what you were passionate about, because he had done it when he was young. So he kind of related to us on a couple of different levels. And he just came across the father figure because he had been through the waves a little bit more than us. And but he did introduce us to all the record labels. They paid for the demos. And we cut 4 songs, and then we ended up inviting the people to see a showcase, and one of the showcases was in our jam room. So they came in, they went up. We had this bar, we built it ourselves upstairs, which was hilarious. But we put them in the building before anybody else was let in. And so nobody really paid attention to them being there. So they organically got to just stand there and watch, like, this is what's going on with this scene or whatever.
Yeah, and how people are reacting to your band.
They came in, people rolled in coolers. They came in with their lawn chairs. We had big sand, 5-gallon buckets full of sand for people to smoke and put their cigarettes in and all that kind of stuff to make sure we didn't burn the building down. But they were there to just watch and just take it in. And then we performed, a set while they were there. And we got 6 offers. And it was so exciting.
Wow.
And there was this guy named Brian Huttenhauer who worked for A&M Records. And of all the people that were there that night, the thing about being at the warehouse was whenever the party was over and people were leaving and all that kind of stuff, we would take one of those drums that was in the building and stick it in the back of a pickup truck, and we'd have to ride the parking lot and get all the glass and bottles and pizza boxes and clean it up, because, you know, at daylight, big 18-wheeler rigs would start coming in and load out of the other bay doors. So we had to make sure so we didn't get in trouble for
right, because it's still a working warehouse at the time. Yeah. So then you got that recording contract, and then you got the recording contract, and then you ended up recording your first album at that same studio, Ardent Studios, and you kind of said it was almost like going to college. It was like your college, because you're college age and you're learning a ton. But talk about the recording that first album, because you said that you saw like Stevie Ray Vaughan once, and REM was there a lot, and Keith Richards was doing a solo album at the time.
Yeah, it was crazy. Well, what I was telling you is the guy from A&M, he stayed at our warehouse that night we showcased. He rode around in the back of the truck with us until we cleaned the parking lot up. And so we ended up, they were talking to us about the offers that we got, and we said, hey, we really like the guy from A&M. He was the most genuine dude. He stuck around and hung out and talked to us, and he was just a chill dude, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, so the next thing we know, we said, man, we want to work with A&M. And it was just such a crazy learning experience, man. We had never been in that situation. We were green. We were still trying to figure out our instruments and our, you know, my vocals and all that kind of stuff. And going in the studio was so exciting. We were working with Paul Ebersole. He went on to work like Three Doors Down and a bunch of other people. But
now, do you get to pick the producer at that point in the studio and stuff, or you make suggestions, or how does that? Because like that's pretty amazing. They let you record in Ardent. They didn't make you go to LA or New York or something, right?
That was part of our production deal, is that we would record in Memphis. Is that he wanted us to do the record there. And as far as Paul, he was kind of our introduction into Ardent. Like he had done those first sessions with us. We were comfortable with him, you know, and it's, you know, you spend like 16 or 18 hours a day with somebody hanging around talking and stuff. You kind of get to know them. It's more of a, you know, he was more like a band member, you know, and family member after hanging around with him for so long. Cause we did tons of rehearsals and pre-production before we went in, because we wanted to have it right when we got in the studio. And then the actual process of recording, you know, of getting the drum sounds and, you know, getting the headphones fixed the way you want it, where it's all dialed in, where we got everything just like we like it. So he was super patient, but Paul was one of the producers on the record. And then the co-producer was a guy named Joe Hardy, who had done all the ZZ Top records, like She's Got Legs and Afterburner and all that kind of stuff. And so he was a more kind of seasoned producer, and it had a bunch of success. So when he came on board, it gave us a lot of credibility within the industry. People took notice because they said, hey, Joe's working on something new. There's some young little group of people he's found in Memphis that he's working with. So between him and Paul, they were just amazing. And when we said it was like going to college, it really was. Like they went through the processes with us. They talked to us about all the different kind of microphones, and we tried all kind of different amps. And I mean, it was just, we really started learning about the craft.
Yeah. And you said
being in the studio.
16 hours a day?
Yeah, it would just depend on, you know, at the very beginning, it was a little bit sparse. We would go in, we kind of cut songs like they did demo sessions in Nashville. We'd go in with a batch of maybe 5 or 6 songs and record those. And then we'd say, okay, what's the best one out of this batch? And we'd say, okay, there's the bar. That's the best one we've got out of this one. Put the rest of them on the back burner. We got to beat this one. Let's go write a whole nother batch of songs. And we'd go in. And a lot of times they were really nice to us to let us go in. Maybe we would go in on an overnight session or something where we could go in. We'd go rehearse all day and something, and then go set up with one of the night guys in the middle of the night and just get some sounds up where we could hear it. And we'd run the tracks and stuff in the studio. And, you know, we had some access that we may have not had if we were doing it at a regular studio, which was kind of nice. And so, man, we just worked. We probably wrote 60 or 70 songs for that first record.
Wow.
And it was just awesome. It was so fun. We were trying a bunch of different styles and singing, you know, melodies and ideas. And it was just so fun. We loved it, and for us, the producers really did such a great job on the record. We couldn't believe it when we heard the mixes and stuff they did. We just went, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" You know.
Yeah.
How did they? That's not us. How did they do that?
No, and I love the first single off that album, "Walking Shoes." That's how I found you guys. And then I later did a deep dive and got, more familiar with your catalog. But that song, kind of catapulted the band on rock radio and MTV. And then you guys got to go on Headbangers Ball, which I was a big fan of. And I guess if originally it was Adam Curry was the host of that, and then later Ricky Rockin. But so what was it like seeing your videos on MTV and then being able to go into MTV after watching that show?
Man, I'm telling you, there was like a couple of things that happened during that time. We had heard our songs on the radio with Malcolm Riker, the guy I was talking about before, and hearing yourself on the radio, somebody introducing you and stuff, it was nothing like it. But when we went on that television show, it was so crazy because we watched Headbangers Ball like every weekend.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we knew, we were sitting across from the guy, and we went, "Oh my God." I was like, "Look at his hair, man. Oh my God, this is crazy." We were all thinking that. But Keith and I went, and let's see, I think Patrick and I went on there on the first time.
Okay.
We went multiple times.
Oh, sure.
On there promoting the records and stuff. But I think we were kind of in, it was kind of surreal. Like we were there talking and we taped it or whatever, and we really didn't think about it. And then when we got home and it came on, we were like, "Oh my God, we're on Headbangers Ball." I mean, it was just like, we were so overwhelmed with, because A&M, we would go to New York and do press days, and it'd be, a whole day of just sitting in a conference room, and they'd, file in a bunch of different rock writers, and they would ask us about our shows, and then they would say, "Hey, well, I'm going to come on the road with you, and I'll review your live performance or whatever." And so we got to know a few of them, and we invited all of them to Memphis. Every time we met somebody, we were like, "Please come to Memphis and hang out with us." And so we take them and show them around town. And some of those guys we're still friends with. There's guys that we bump into that we just can't believe we've known them as long as we've known them. That's just really amazing. Cool.
Yeah, and then you guys were on the, this must have been surreal too, is having that song on the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure soundtrack, the Dancing with a Gypsy.
It was pretty amazing. That song was one of the first 4 demos that we did to get shot. I think we did like Love's a Bitch and Dancing with a Gypsy, and I think Phantom Rider was one of them. Phantom Rider was kind of the one that was a local, regional song that got on the radio, and it got Malcolm was a friend of ours, and he started playing the song, and the phone started lighting up, and so he actually put us in rotation on the radio station, like in regular rotation, and it became like a top 5 song in Memphis. And the guy Brian Huttenhauer that I was talking about from A&M, he flew into town to see us, and when he landed, he went and got in his rent-a-car, and when he turned the radio on, our song was playing. And he said, "I knew I was going to sign you when I did that." He said, "I was determined I was going to figure out how we were going to work together."
Yeah.
And so we owe a lot to Malcolm. He was playing the song all the time, and so that had been one that had kind of got a lot of traction for us. So that one was on there. But the Dancing with the Gypsy song was part of our master recordings that we're doing to get shop. And it just so happened when we hooked up with A&M, it was right. The timing was just perfect where they were saying, "We're putting together a soundtrack."
And you're not
on grab one of your songs.
You're not going to be on the new one though, because they're making a new movie. I haven't heard the soundtrack.
No, we did. We were laughing about that if we would submit music for that or not. But man, it was so awesome. I remember when the movie came out, I took a bunch of my friends and we all went to the movie theater to watch it and see if our song showed up in it or whatever. And it's like a super quick scene. It's like maybe 15 seconds or something. They pull up in a car and we're on the radio.
Oh, that's so
they're
cool.
like right up and they turn the song off and start talking to each other. Yeah.
So you all cheer when it comes on in the theater when it came on?
Oh yeah, it was so funny. It was awesome. But they were really sweet. It was an A&M soundtrack. So Extreme was on there. I was trying to think of who else was on there. I think Shark Island. There was a few people that were on there. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it was just a timing thing. And that one happened to be one that was already done and completed, and it wasn't going to go on the record. So they were like, "Yeah, let's use that one and put it on the."
So then, and you guys did a tour. Was this your first big tour? Was with Bonham and the Cult? Keith was saying that Jason Bonham was one of the nicest guys he's ever met. What do you remember about that tour?
Yeah, he was amazing. That was kind of later in the tour. We did.
Did you do the Dangerous Toys and LA Guns?
Yeah,
was that the first one?
That was amazing. Yeah, that was one of the first big ones, and they were awesome. We kind of clicked with the Dangerous Toys guys because we kind of had a Southern thing going on.
Yeah,
and then Austin, Tracy and them. Yeah, I still talk to Jason. He's crazy, and he still sings his ass off, and he looks exactly the same.
No, I just I saw him for the first time this summer, and he was great. And then he came on my podcast. Really nice guy.
Oh God, he's nuts. I mean, we had such a good time with each other that we ended up riding each other's buses. I mean, it was like herding cats. You know, the tour guys, tour managers were trying to find us and stuff. And finally, they banned us. They were like, nobody, we keep losing y'all. We can't figure out the head count where everybody is. So everybody just stay on your own bus. Let's go. And, but the LA Guns guys were so nice, man. They were like really, really clicking on, it was cocked and loaded.
Okay. Yeah. That was a great album.
Jane.
But so what happened? Because I find it weird that there's two LA Gun versions right now because they split off. They got the drummer and the bass player in one and the singer and guitarist in the other version. Like, was there a lot of fights and disagreements on that tour that you remember, or did everyone get along then?
No, I didn't remember that. I think they were really had a lot of momentum. Mm-hmm. We were doing like 2,000 seat theaters. We did all the theaters across the whole country, like the Fox Theater in I think the Fox Theater was down in Atlanta. And, but it was beautiful. You would walk in and go, man, am I in the right building? I don't even think we're supposed to be in it. It was like, you know, the nice theater from like the 1920s or something.
Wow.
But the crowds were awesome. They were so good live. They just sounded killer. Tracy was awesome on the guitars every night. And Phil's voice sounded great. I just saw him recently, and he sounded really good.
Yeah.
He sounded really good on him.
No, they got a new song out, and it's really good, too.
Yeah, I saw that Frontiers thing. But anyway, they were so nice. I think we started in like Dayton, Ohio or something. It was really crazy. But the tour manager came up and said, everybody needs to meet in the hotel bar at 7:00. And so it was our first kind of big tour or whatever. We've been doing clubs and stuff. And so we showed up and we're like, man, they're probably just lay the law down or something, you know, about their show or whatever. But what it was is they brought us in and they said, man, get ready for the best 8 weeks of your life. And they threw their glasses up in the air and we just all went crazy. We just went, oh my God, this is going to be such a good time.
Well, yeah, Keith said that, you know, I asked him about when I had him on your guitarist, when I had him on my show, he said, I asked him if it was, you know, your band was kind of like Motley Crue, the Dirt, was there that kind of stuff. And he said you guys were like milk and cookies compared to Motley Crue, but there must have been some chaos, definitely. Right, on this tour with LA Guns and at that time.
No, we were totally just soaking it. Our eyes were big as saucers, man. We had never done anything like that. We never traveled before we got the record deal, so we didn't know anything about being on the road. And when we first started out, we were just in a little 15-passenger van, you know, scooting around the country, lean and mean and trying to get our chops down and all that kind of stuff. But they helped really season us, man, like not only like playing every night and being busy with them on the road, but just about being on the road, you know, about all the people that you run into, all the activities. Everybody is just.
So what did you learn?
Chaotic. Man, I think number one, we got really, really good on our instruments. By the time we came back, we toured for 2 years on that first Tora Tora record.
Okay.
And the thing that you were talking about, we were with LA Guns and Dangerous Toys. And then after the holiday, I think that was 89. And then 90 is when we hooked up with Bonham and the Cult. And we were doing Coliseums. I mean, we played our hometown Coliseum, the one I was talking about earlier, that we'd seen all the concerts in. And we got to go stand on the stage and look from the stage out to the audience at sound check. And we were like, oh my God, this is where Van Halen was standing. You
That's
know,
crazy.
Or this is where I saw AC/DC, you know, knock the rafters out of this place. But I think what we learned, we just got savvy. I mean, of course we were totally nuts. I mean, we were 20 years old and we were doing what everybody else was doing in college, except we woke up in a different town every morning, you know, which was awesome. It was crazy. But I think it taught us about the road. It's a lot of work. It is like the fun part of traveling is there, but it's also, you're only there for a limited amount of time, and you have to do a lot of work.
Because you got to do the sound checks and everything and get everything ready. And
and back then we were meeting sponsors and the promoters and the record label people. Back then, radio was a big part of you having success. So we would go and meet with the radio people. We'd do a performance on the radio at drive time or during the lunch hour or whatever opportunity we would get, and try to do as many interviews with local papers. And, I guess today's equivalent would be talking to tastemakers and bloggers and podcasters like yourself, to get to the right audience.
Yeah.
But back then we were doing it boots on the ground, where it was like we would target that market and say, okay, man, what do we need to do? What do we have to get accomplished while we're here? And Keith and I were, a lot of times we would go, Keith would play and I'd sing, or something. So we were kind of like spokesman roles. So we were busy a lot of the day. We would go there and work. And then, of course, we blew off a lot of steam. You'd play, for 30 or 45 minutes, and then you'd have 20 hours or something till you had to wake up again and start the day over again. So we made the most of that. But I don't know. I think mostly what we learned is we just love being around people. We loved hanging out with the fans. We loved, people would always take us around and show us the cities and
how does that
cool
work?
Place to eat.
Yeah. How does that work back in the day? Because now, there's all these meet and greets. Some of them are free. Some of them are, you got to pay, or there's different levels. You get a picture autograph. How did that work back in the day with fans? Did they line up, and did some bands come out and meet with them? Did some just stay in their tour buses, or how did that work?
Man, it was different in every city. I mean, we did a lot of those meet and greet things were a lot more organized and everything through the record label and stuff. I mean, I know they still are organized like that. Maybe I'm saying that the wrong way, but we were not as much in control of all that stuff. We were kind of just pointed in a direction. We had a tour manager that had our day schedule, and he would just click it off. He was like, like the Dirt movie you were talking about earlier. He was the guy that he would be the first person you see in the morning, and he was the last guy you saw at the end of the night to just make sure you were going to bed and you knew what you were getting yourself into for the next day. And we were lucky. We had great tour managers and people that took care of us. And so the meet and greet things were kind of interesting. We met a lot of people around outside the shows back in the day, where we would just walk out and everybody was hanging out, smoking cigarettes or talking or whatever. And we had loved staying. They would always have to drag us out of wherever we were hanging or whatever we were into, because we wanted to stay and see everybody. And we just loved seeing everybody and hearing about their towns and what they were getting into and the bands they were listening to. I mean, we would just sit and talk for hours. Had a great time, It was just, I don't know. It was something super organic about the way we interacted with everybody. I mean, there was definitely a corporate element to it where the record label and stuff organized things for us, but I feel like we kind of connected with our fans in a different way. Like, we had people that would bring food to every time we come to the city. They'd show up the bus with food, and they're like, we know you're eating a bunch of junk on the road, and we cook dinner for you. And we just had really, really cool people.
That's very cool.
And I tell you what was awesome. When we first started traveling, we took a Hertz Penske truck that had all of our equipment that the crew guys would drive behind us at night. And when we packed it, we packed one of those 55-gallon drums as a barbecue grill in the back of the truck. So the first thing all the loaders would see when they opened their truck was this big grill. And we would throw these grill outs at our hotels. So we'd be at the Holiday Inn or the Hilton or whatever it was. And the record company would get the radio station people. We get the contest winners. We would tell some of the fans ahead of time where we were going to be. And we would throw these crazy cookouts. And we were collecting things the whole time. So we had these yard candles, these tiki lamps. People were showing up with like cardboard cutouts. We had this girl that she had a battery in her belt that had a hula skirt on that we would turn it on, and she would stand over in the corner like shaking her little grass skirt at you while we were cooking out and stuff. And it just turned into these like organic cookouts, man.
Really
we did
fun.
them all over the country.
Yeah.
It was like so awesome. The record company loved it. They would help us get the supplies and everything. They'd be like, what I need to go get, and we'd tell them ahead of time, and we'd meet them there and set up camp. And
the other bands join you for this too?
Not that I can recall. I mean, I'm sure if they were at the same hotel with us, they came out. But a lot of times we were just doing it on the move. We were kind of on the run, and we would stop in. But we did a lot of things like that where we interacted with the fans and had fun. And, you know,
what about with this? So then you got in '92, the Wild America album comes out. It was pushed back because the record label was trying to promote Bryan Adams' record. But then it does come out, and then you guys do a tour with Warrant and Lynch Mob. Were you a fan of Warrant and Jani Lane? Because I'm a big fan of them. Or would you have any memories of Jani Lane and Warrant?
Man, they were amazing. They were all super down to earth. I just remember George Lynch rehearsing, like warming up in like the dressing rooms. And back then we would be at like the basketball arena for, you know, the University of Tennessee's one of them I can think of, where he would be in the area where the showers and stuff were and have his amp in there where it's reverb, you know, and stuff kind of bouncing around. And God, he would just tear the strings off that thing, just doing his warm ups. He was just amazing. And the whole band, Warrant and everybody, they just treated us so well. They knew that we were kind of coming back after being away for a minute, and they were having a lot of success. They were out on the road. And that Wicked Sensation song was out, I think, when we were with them. It was just, what
was George Lynch like? Because I've heard mixed stories about him. That
he was kind of quiet, honestly. He was friendly and stuff, but he wasn't like just, you know, your best buddy or something. But I mean, he was very friendly when we talked. We were kind of all running around trying to get in stuff, man. You know how it was.
Was that? But that was kind of at that point in the 90s where the, you know, rock was kind of changing. It was turning into the grunge. So was it did you guys was Warrant having a hard time selling out theaters at that point, or?
Maybe, you know, in retrospect, I don't remember it just being like crushing the whole thing. I'm trying to think. I didn't ever hear anything where it was just a total, you know, bomb out thing. Most of the places they went, they had a hardcore following on the shows that we were doing. But yeah, the grunge thing was interesting because we played some shows with Alice in Chains,
right?
You know, and actually became to know them and became friends with them over, you know, a couple of years where we're bumping into them and stuff. They were recording at A&M some while we were out there. And, but when we played with them, we really didn't, people ask me all the time, they're like, man, did you like really get upset about the grunge thing and all that? But when we were in it, we just saw them and just thought they were another rock band. You know, they were super nice dudes. They were down to earth. We had a lot of, you know, fun laughs with them and had drinks with them and all that kind of stuff. And, you know,
did you ever
I've talked to people and they just said,
sorry, go on.
Well, they just said, you know, if we had bad feelings towards it or whatever, we were like, no, man. I mean, I remember seeing them. They came to Memphis and Lane had broke his ankle somehow or another. And he had a cast on. And so they brought him out on a couch. And he sat with his leg cocked up the whole show. He wore a big hat. And he had on a pair of shorts and a big old, you know, boot around the bottom of his foot. And but man, his voice was so powerful. He was just such a great singer. But they were just nice dudes, man. They were out busting it on the road. They were hustling. They had some big success. We saw them on their club dates and stuff. So we saw them before they. Yeah,
Keith said that he hung out with Chris Cornell because you guys were on the same label, and Chris Cornell was just a really quiet, reserved person. Did you see any of the because obviously we know the you know the story with Lane and Chris, you know, both fell to the drug issues. Did you see that on the road when you played with them? Did you see them doing like the hardcore drugs and stuff, or were they just drinking at that point?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't. I mean, if they were doing it, they probably that kind of stuff was always around, man. I mean, all kind of things, but we were, I don't know, we just weren't doing that kind of stuff.
So what happens? Like, you ever just walk in and you just see like one of the bands, like people like just literally just shooting up heroin right in front of you, or how's that?
No. I mean, if they did any kind of stuff like that, they were not around doing that kind of stuff. I never saw any of that stuff. I mean, I think the only thing maybe that we would have known about is somebody like maybe in the crew or something, you know, snorting something. And that would be, and they didn't do it around us. I just happened to see or hear it, you know, just because I happened to be in the place where they were doing it.
Well, right, because I had Brian Forsyth from Kix, and he was telling me, like, he got into that drug thing pretty deep for a while. And he says you can kind of, when you get into it, then you can kind of pick up when other people are, if they're high, if they're on. So did you, just obviously you didn't get into the drugs in terms of doing it, but being around it, did you start to recognize the signs when someone was really like on coke or heroin?
Man, maybe later. Later
yeah.
on. I mean, look, we were having a great time too. I'm not saying we were total innocent people. We were doing stuff too, but I really wasn't concerned with it as long as it wasn't affecting, what they had going on and who we were dealing with and hanging around. It was kind of like, do whatever you want to do,
sure,
kind of mentality. But I think the part with me was I got more kind of around any of that kind of activities and drugs and all that was when I was home, because we would, they say idle hands.
Oh.
When we would be in Memphis, everybody wanted to see you, everybody wanted to party, everybody wanted to, hang out and be buddies with you and all that kind of stuff. And the late night kind of places, hey, come back here, excuse me.
Sounds
some
like
of these late night places were, it was a lot of stuff like that going on. It was all over the place in Memphis.
Yeah.
In the late night.
So that's when
and all that kind of stuff.
You ended up having more time because the band it ended around 94? Because I know you guys had that Revolution Day album. Do you think that recording is the official recording will ever come out of that? Because I know the label has it, and so you released the demos in 2011. But do you think the original masters would ever be released for that one?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. The way that we had to just, shelve it at the point where we were with A&M, and we were disappointed because we'd spent about 2 years working on that record. Ugh. Like for each one of those records, we had probably written 60 or 70 songs.
Yeah.
And we were working with Tom Werman, who had done all the Cheap Trick records and worked with Motley Crue. And he was in Memphis. And that was kind of a dark period for us because we were really frustrated and we really didn't know what to do because the world had changed. The music industry had changed with
you said that things went from like your phone was ringing off the hook to all of a sudden now nobody calls you back. Now, like you seem like a pretty laid back guy, pretty positive guy. Stuff doesn't bother you, but that's got to hit you kind of hard at that point, right?
You too. Yeah, it did. It hit us really hard because we had been like going 90-0 for about 6 years, and all of a sudden we just went into complete stalemate. It was a pause. And, in retrospect, everything kind of happened like it was supposed to. I think at that time we were trying to figure out what we're going to do as far as touring and stuff. Keith had gotten married. He was getting ready to have a son, and he was like, man, I kind of really want to pull back for a minute and be with my family for a second. He was the first one of us to get married. And I think he was having some second thoughts. He was like, I'm not sure if I want to go right now or if we should hold off for a minute. Let me be with my family. And when the A&M thing happened, it was kind of like, hey, man, this was like divine intervention. You want to take a break and let's just do that. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go away for a month or something, and then we're going to get back on the road. But it ended up, it was 7 years until we got back on stage together.
Wow. Yeah. You ended up working at a record label, and then you went back to school and you got your master's degree. And you ended up being a music teacher. What kinds of classes, and you still do that, right? What kind of classes do you teach in this music school? Is it you teach singing, songwriting, or music business, or is it all three? Or
yeah. So what happened was after Tora Tora, I hooked up with another friend of mine in Memphis, McCormack. He was out on the road as a hired gun with Survivor, the Eye of the Tiger guys, and he kind of looked like Jimmy Page, man. He had this long, curly black hair. He walked out with a pedal board about as, big enough to launch a space shuttle. He had all these pedals and stuff on it. And I'd always been a fan of his. He played in a band called Driving South that was from Memphis when he was doing his original stuff. And he and I hooked up. We started talking. We said, hey, let's just write a song. We see each other out. And we said, we've been threatening to do this for the past 6 years. And I was like, I'm not into anything. I'm just playing local, playing some gigs around town. Let's go get together. And we ended up staying together for about 6 years, 5 or 6 years. We wrote records. We played. We had a couple of different lineups. And it was really fun because it was super different than Keith. Keith was like super heavy and distorted, and Hal was like real clean and had like a bunch of effects and stuff on him. It was bluesy, a little more bluesy kind of sound and stuff. And so I really enjoyed it. We kind of got rootsy, and we had a lot of fun. And while I was working with Hal, I ended up bumping into my wife, and we had our first son. And I was traveling with Hal out to we went to Seal Beach and to do a record out in California. And man, I don't know what happened. I was like on the beach, I had my guitar in my lap, the wind was blowing, the boats were going by, the sun was out, the sky was blue. But I was sitting there and I just said, man, my family's not with me. And I just had this really weird feeling. Like I said, man, I think I'm just kind of fried. I think I just need to take a mini break. And so I did that trip. We did our recordings, and that's, you know, since come out and all that kind of stuff. This was, man,
what is that band
20
called?
years ago or something. It started out as like a little local thing called Homemade Flavor, and then it ended up, the project was Quarter McCormack. You can find it on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. It's really fun. It's really good. And I'm still happy that we work together. But I kind of, when I went back, I talked to Hal. I said, hey, man, I just need to take a break for a second. You know, we were kind of just doing some acoustic stuff around town. I was like, I'm cool with that, but I don't want to do any more traveling or anything. And so I was trying to talk to my wife, and we just got to talking about how much the entertainment industry had changed. And I said, man, maybe I should update myself. You know, this digital realm is rushed in. It's kind of a whole new world. It's not anything I'm familiar with. So I went and got my degrees at the University of Memphis. And while I was doing that, John Fry, the guy that owned the studio, and my first manager, Richard Sanders, had written me some letters of recommendation based on my life experience in the industry to help me get into college. I'd left high school as a high school senior to go do the Tora Tora stuff. And so they, based on their recommendations and stuff, I got into school and started studying it.
Did you have a high school diploma or a GED or?
I had a GED when I went to do the Tora Tora thing. Because I mean, listen, man, I'm from the Delta in Mississippi, and my family's like Southern Baptist. And I walked in and said, I'm running away with a rock and roll band. That was kind of a heavy conversation.
Yeah.
But because they were musical, my mom's side of the family was very musical.
Sure.
They were really supportive.
That's
they
good.
said, man, if this is something you're passionate about, they love music. And they were like, if this is something you want to do, you know, and at the time I just said, man, I really feel like this is something I'm going to miss out on something. And I don't want to regret not taking a chance to go follow this, you know, just see what happens. And so anyway, later in life, I was 30, you know, and I went back to college. But I realized in my mind, I said, man, you know, I had these guys, Richard and John Fry and all that were in my life. And I just said, man, I want to be that to somebody else. I want to, you know, I don't have the end all be all experience, but I have some, and I have one perspective. And I was like, maybe I could help people that are just entering into the business. Maybe that would be something. And I was thinking about doing entertainment law, you know, maybe or something. And as I was doing my degrees, I was talking to Richard, and he said, hey, man, you know, what are you going to do when you get out? And I said, I don't know, man. Should I go be a booking agent? You know, maybe I should go to William Morris or something. And he kind of laughed, and he said, well, he goes, man, we have this training program, executive training program, where you go in to RCA Records and you can go anywhere in the world that they have an office, and you learn operations from the ground up. And it was like a 2-year program. And so I started weighing that against going to law school. I said, man, I really want to do this. I want to go work at the label just to see how everything works. And man, it was like another couple of years of school. I went in like as an artist and walked into those meetings where they were doing the scheduling. They were having the marketing meetings. They were doing the radio programming meetings. I went to every meeting in the building, and man, it blew my mind. I didn't know any of those conversations were going on when I was in Tora Tora. We were like in survival mode. We were out there making sure we had strings and that we were showing up to the right place. But inside here, I learned the back end of it. And I learned how important it was to have one champion, one person say yes. Man, I was in a meeting one time, and they were talking about an artist didn't have traction. And they said, well, man, we got 15 other dudes behind him. Let's, you know, go ahead, pull the plug on that dude. And I don't know, it was a room full of, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 people sitting at a conference table. And this one lady raised her hand and said, hey, can I ask y'all something? We believed in this guy. We made a commitment to him. Can we give him 2 weeks on the charts? His single is stalled. And this discussion started, and I was in the corner, just taking some notes or something. And then all of a sudden, it was like 12 angry men. I'm not kidding. Like, she said something, and then all of a sudden, the PR person goes, you know what? I could go back and visit my so-and-so contacts over. And the sales guy goes, let me go back to the sales reps. And the radio guy goes, let me make all my guys make one more push at it. And they looked at the CEO, and he said, let's do it. And I just thought about it. I said, man, she just saved this guy. Like, because everybody else was scared to say anything. That was a risky move that if it didn't work, it would probably come back to haunt her. But actually it happened. It was okay. The guy survived. And it was just crazy. I saw that happen, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And they really thought about the artist and cared about them. And, it made a difference. And so anyway, that was kind of my switch over into the entertainment business side. And so I worked there and worked at music publishing. And man, I just stumbled into teaching. I didn't ever think I'd be a teacher. I quit school. I left school. I didn't think I would ever be a teacher. But I really had this drive in me to pass on any information that I had if it was somebody excited about being in the music industry. And so I ran into a lot of people in Nashville that had worked went to school at Belmont University. And so I applied over there, and I never heard back. And then one day I was working in publishing, and this guy called me out of the blue and said, hey man, I've had your resume sitting in my desk for a couple of years. And he said, my daughter is graduating this year, and she has something going on the day that I have class. Would you want to teach this class? And it was just the most random phone call, and it was a block from my office where I was on Music Row, and Belmont was right up the street. And and he said, I've been teaching this class for 20 years. He goes, I'll shadow you. You don't have to. I said, I'd love to do it. When does it start? And he said, in like 2 days.
Wow.
And so I said, yes. And I went up there, and man, listen, I've played everywhere in the world in front of people. I've played in bars like the Blues Brothers that needed chicken wire in front of me, where people were throwing stuff and everything. Nothing scared me as bad as walking in that room.
Really?
My knees were knocking. I walked in and looked at this room. It was about 30 kids, and their eyes were big around as saucers. And they said, we want to be in the music business. They're just looking at me.
Wow.
And I said, it was a marketing class. When I worked at RCA, I was in artist development and marketing, and I'd worked there and got some experience for about 2 years. And then I worked at a Christian rock label that was part of Sony. So I kind of went back to my rock roots. And so I'd got some insight, and I'd been on the inside as an executive. And then I had this experience as a singer in a rock band. And so I just took that and brought in real life application in my teaching. I just said, hey man,
Nice.
I'm going to talk to you about the business side, but I'm going to bring in like some of the creative aspects of this too that I want to talk to you about. I can relate to y'all that way. And it was just cool because I kind of was in the middle.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So I started doing that, teaching, and then this opportunity came up at SAE Institute. I was teaching part-time and working in publishing, and actually working as an independent consultant with a bunch of artists, that had investors and stuff like that. I'd help them put together their plans and stuff. But this SAE thing was a full-time teaching job, and it's an expedited program. It's 15 months long. And I teach everything from survey, which is about roles in companies, so management and attorneys and business managers and booking agents and all that, to entrepreneurship, to, social media and marketing, to events and touring,
Okay. So everything.
So it just depends on what semester we're in and what class I'm dealing with. But it's really fun because the classes are small. They don't have to spend a fortune on their education. They can come in and do what they're passionate about. A lot of the people are just musicians, and they're just trying to figure out the business side of the entertainment industry. So I talk to them a lot about intellectual property and copyright. When you were asking before about Revolution Day, who owns the masters. So that's a good case study in my class to say, hey, we were little kids. We signed a contract. We're recording these records, and we have licensed the rights out to this record company that has the rights to those master recordings. So unless we have a reversion clause or something like that in there, then they have ownership, or we have to negotiate it.
Is there, going back to that, is there ways to get those things back? Because I just had the guy from, I don't know if you know the band Sacred Reich, but they're like a a thrash metal band, and they have an album that they can't get the rights to. They're having like the same issue where they just can't get the rights. I think you can get it on iTunes, but they want to get the physical copy so they can, you know, sell it to their fans, and they just can't do it. So is it just like, is there any sort of legal way around that, or is it pretty much the record company owns it? There's not much you can do.
I think with the Revolution Day thing, it would have to get licensed out from them. I think they have the ownership. But,
and for them, it's just not a priority, right? Because they have bigger.
Not really. Yeah. I wouldn't think so. But I mean, I've had people approach us about Wild America, like doing a reissue on that. And I think even a couple of years ago, there was a company, Lemon Records, that went in and they remastered Wild America, just the one track, and then put it out, which was kind of cool. And they'd put it out on vinyl. But eventually, Revolution Day could get, you know, released on vinyl or something like that. We could go in and do something like that. But it's really depends on the contract. So in our contract, if there's a reversion clause, there may be a window of time after a certain amount of years that we could go back and say, can we claim this? You know, just like you do on a publishing deal or something like that, where you get your rights to your songwriting parts back or something. You know?
Well, so, and then your band, Tora Tora, then you guys got back together in 2008. You did the Rocklahoma. That was kind of your first big show back. And now you still do shows, and you basically have two new albums out, because Bastards of Beale is only like a year or two old. And then you have this new 5-song acoustic EP, Unplugged.
Yeah. So the Bastards of Beale was amazing. We did it at Sam Phillips Studio in Memphis. If your listeners don't know who he is, he found Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, Johnny Cash, Howlin' Wolf. He did all these amazing things. He sold Sun to RCA, the studio, the physical place, and then in the record label. And then he moved down the street and created Sam Phillips Recording. And that's where we went. And so everybody from Bob Dylan to Robert Plant had recorded in this place. And it looks like the 1960s when you go in there. And we did it with Jeff Powell, who was the assistant engineer on Wild America. He was like our age. He's like another family member. Made it super comfortable.
He's worked with Stevie Ray Vaughan and B.B. King and Danny Elfman and all sorts of people.
Yeah, yeah. And he's just a great dude. He's super talented. And he said, listen, man, I'm going to make this super easy. And basically, we cut the record live. We just went in. The guys were in the room live. They put me in a vocal booth. And we counted the record off and just started going through the tracks, man. And it was awesome. It was so fun. It was such a cool experience. And, you know, we thank Frontiers for giving us an opportunity and a platform to connect with the audience. And we did about 25 shows last year, so we had a ball. The record has been out since February of 2019, so it's a little over a year, maybe a year and a half. But it was so fun, and we were nervous. We didn't know what it was going to sound like. We walked in with a clean slate. We didn't bring in any old ideas or anything rehashed, anything. We just said, let's just do all new stuff. And honestly, man, all the people, we had jumped on the Monsters of Rock cruises and met a bunch of people, and we just got to thinking about all these experiences that we had. We were reconnecting with people we hadn't seen in years and talking, and we saw all the bands on there. That really inspired us for the record. You know, they kind of helped us. We started thinking about all those, you know, experiences when we were younger and all that, and it inspired a lot of the songs on the record. And so it's a great memory. It's a good way to kind of book in, you know, the Tora stuff. And then this acoustic thing is, man, honestly, we owe it all to that Jim Green, my friend that passed away. He was actually a promoter on the show. We did it last June 7th, so about a year ago. We went to a little tiny venue in Memphis that holds about 300 people, and we did an acoustic set, and we've never done that. We've always been full-on band. We've never sat down and done anything. Keith likes to have distortion. He likes to be cranked up. And but we said, you know what, let's do something that's fun. And we kind of did a deep dive. We went into some of the records and songs that people wouldn't expect.
Now, and why the deep dive? Why not? Because like you didn't do Walk and Shoes, your biggest hit, or some of the other hits. It was mostly like more of a deep dive. Why did you? I
think it was just some of those just felt better on acoustic. They felt like they fit the mood that we were trying to create. There's a song called Candle in Stone. It was off Revolution Day. We've always wanted to do that one and do it live, and we had never done it before, and so that was fun. And then we did Son of a Prodigal Son, which was the single off the new record. We did that one. But it was just so fun. We wanted to kind of mess around with some that we didn't normally. I mean, they put in a lot of practice time, keeping them with the arrangements and all that stuff. And it was just fun. You know, we did 5 songs on this release, and I think maybe eventually we might have like a part 2 of that at some point. I think we're just going to go back and look at them, make sure they're okay as far as our performances and everything.
Are you happy with the response for these last 2 with the acoustic EP and the Bastards of Beale?
The Bastards of...
Hello?
Sorry about that.
Oh.
The Bastards of Beale, I'm really happy. We were so nervous because we didn't know what anybody was going to say. We were like, man, does anybody even care if we're doing anything new, or do they just want to hear Walking Shoes, or, you know, and we didn't know what it was going to sound like either. We were like, you know, but when the 4 of us got together and we just walked in and we just hit the chord, you know, in the jam room, we're like, man, that's us, man. That's the Tora sound. We're just going to pick up. We felt like we picked up right where Revolution Day left off, which is really crazy. That was 94, you know, that last record that we were working on. And we let out some previously unreleased, like, little demo records that were for Surprise Attack, Wild America, and then the Revolution Day record. That was around 2011, I think. But the Bastards of Beale, we were really happy. I really think that it was, you know, as a creative person, and I don't know, as a creative type, you're kind of your own hardest critic. So, I mean, I could nitpick and pull a bunch of things out and analyze things that I think I could do better or whatever. But for the experience and for the speed that we did it, we were kind of limited in a couple of ways on that record. Number one, I'm in Nashville, and I wanted to do it in Memphis. I said, it's got to be a Memphis record.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a time issue and a budget issue. We didn't have a ton of money to spend on the record, but it worked out perfect. I mean, we went in, we picked the songs that we liked, and we did it just like we did in the old days. We took an old cardboard piece of paper, stuck it on the wall, listed the songs out, and checked it off, man, just like we did when we were little kids. It was so fun. We would go and rehearse it at our drummer's house. He's got like a rehearsal space for his drums, and we went over there, and we just, you know, bashed it out, man. We went in and we sat down and we went through the parts, and Jeff came over and ran through the arrangements with us, and we got like a little skeleton of our sequence in our arrangements, and we went in the studio, and just, it was so cool. We did basic tracks together because we did everything in about, I think it was 8 or 9 days. So I would just run down there on the weekends and turn around. I had to come back to teach, you know.
Yeah. It's different.
But it was a different approach. But Keith and I went in and I sang, and he did solos and stuff. And the coolest thing of all was in the building at Sam Phillips. It's this 3-story building. So the first floor are the 2 studios. The second floor used to be their distribution center. It's got like this red shag carpet, these weird lights and stuff, this big kind of storage room. We shot part of the Prodigal Son video in that room, and I'm talking about when you watch it, you'll see it's got red carpet and stuff. And then the third floor is all the offices. And you're not allowed to take any pictures or anything up there. It's Sam's office. The door's always shut. And there's a bar that was off the side of his office on that floor that's decorated like 1950s. You know, and so you could go up there and catch a drink or something and hang out. And it was just this cool vibe, cool atmosphere. But I went down to sing, and it was the only weekend I had to go. My children were getting ready to start school, and I was taking my son to college and stuff. And I said, man, I got to do it this weekend. And we were planning, you know, our calendars and everything. Well, the weekend that I wanted to come, this really famous Stax soul singer wanted the studio.
Mm.
And
can you say who it was?
I was like, what am I'm drawing a blank. Hang on a second. It's You Don't Miss Your Water Till the Well Runs Dry. Hang on. Give me just a second. I just had his name on the tip of my tongue. I know him. I'm trying to think of who it is. His name just went off. William Bell. Sorry.
Okay.
I was like thinking of Al Bell, the guy that ran the studio. His name's William Bell. Man, he's like 80 years old, but he sings. It's like going to church, man. His voice is still. So I walked in, and I could hear the B3 organ and the guitars playing, and it just put chill bumps all over me right now, I'm telling you. It was just so good. It was like going to church, man. But anyway, they told me, they said he wants it. And I said, well, I don't care. And they said, well, we're going to send the tracks to Nashville and you can sing up there. And I said, no, I want to come to Memphis. I don't want this to be cut in Nashville. And I said, just, let's just figure it out when I get down there. And I walked in and they took me up the steps. They said, we want to show you something. And so I thought we were going to this distribution room or whatever. And the next thing I know, they turned the second set of steps. And I looked up and Sam Phillips' office is open. And my microphone is sitting in there. And I was like, oh my God. And they go, you're going to sing your record in Sam's office. And I walked in. I couldn't believe it, man. His desk is still set up. And the chairs are these white leather chairs, and each one of them has a stand-up ashtray next to it, like from the 70s. And his desk, when you look at it, it's like the world's first iPod. It's a desk, and it's got a jukebox built in it. Huh, and so he used to load 45s in it, and he would sit there and make phone calls and try to sell his records. And so Jeff had all of his equipment set up on his desk, and they had me out in the middle of the room. It's that red shag carpet again. And then right behind me was this box TV. It was from like the 50s or something. It was standing on some legs up off the ground. It was heavy as lead, But the front of it had a drawer, and the drawer was pulled out, and it had a Roy Orbison record sitting on it. And I just looked down, and I said, oh, my God, man, I'm in Sam Phillips' office. And Keith sat in there with me. I sang the whole record. I sang 5 songs one day and 5 songs the next day. And then I drove home about 10 o'clock at night. And that was it. That was the record. It was done.
Does that have the same acoustics in that office? I mean, is it meant for recording though, or no?
Oh, it was fine. Yeah. I mean, it was the room was just to get the performance, and then they, could fix everything in the mixes and all that stuff, add the stuff that we needed. But yeah, it was fine. I mean, Jeff had all the stuff on his laptop. I mean, it was set up. I could put any kind of effects, and everybody does everything in a box now anyway. But
yeah, you've worked with some other. You've collaborated, I guess I should say, with some great people. Stan Lynch from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, the drummer. You co-wrote a couple songs with him, and Taylor Rhodes, and the Memphis Horns. You had an interesting story about the Memphis Horns. I heard you tell that when you first started working with them, they were telling you about segregation, that they had to deal with that.
Oh yeah,
growing up in the South. That it sounds kind of like that movie Green Book, where they would drive from town to town, and there were some places they were scared to pull over, get something to eat because they thought they'd get killed.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just like we felt like we had known them our whole life right when we met them. They were just so cool, and it was funny. It was during the Wild America record, but I stayed friends with Wayne until he passed away. He actually moved up here to Nashville, and I saw him up here when I was working in music publishing and stuff. He was living out kind of near my office, but they were just great, and they had been around. They had probably played on 300 #1 records by the time we met them. But Wayne was just the kind of guy that was just like, hey man, I'm a dude from Arkansas. Grew up in a cotton field. I'm just the average Joe, and would just play it down like he didn't play with Elvis or Sting or Robert Cray or all these, Wilson Pickett songs and all that stuff. Otis Redding. They played on, everything from Dock of the Bay to Al Green records. I mean, think about all those things you listened to growing up. That's them on those records, man. It's just crazy.
That is crazy.
He was really funny. When I was dating some girls, when I knew him, he would say, why don't you come over for dinner? And I mean, he would make me look like $1,000,000. I mean, I was a little kid, and trying to make a good impression on somebody. And he would invite me over, and you'd walk in, there was gold records everywhere. And he'd get his trumpet out at the end of the night and kind of tap around on it a little bit. He'd tell me, you got it, man. You got this.
Hello?
Hey, man, if I got you.
Yeah. Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. But yeah, so you were...
That's okay.
Yeah, you were... But so do you hear a lot of those kinds of stories like that they were telling about the segregation? Because I don't like to get political on my podcast, but I mean, I feel like the racism thing is just like, it's not even a political issue. It's more like a social thing. What is it like growing up in the South? I mean, you've spent pretty much your whole life down there in the South. Is racism still, I mean, have you seen things change over your lifetime, or what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just, I feel like you can't get away from that in the news right now.
Man, yeah, that's a hard question, because to me, I was in the music industry. Mm-hmm. You don't really think of racism. Like, I'm inspired by people. I love them and hug them and see them and think about it, and you just don't think of it that way. Where I grew up in Mississippi, especially when I was young in the 70s and, you know, that era, there was definitely a lot of heritage and things that, I don't know, from a social standpoint, I felt like that it wasn't really moving forward. People were hanging on to some things that were, you know, you don't want to treat people different. You don't want social injustice going on. And you could feel that, you know, growing up. But I think what happened to me is I moved around the country a lot. My dad worked for an airline. And so we left maybe when I was going into middle school. I'd probably done elementary school in the South. And then I moved away to South Dakota and then to Houston, Texas, and then down and back into the southern area of Mississippi. But those moves and stuff introduced me to so many different cultures, different ways of thinking, even just moving from the South up to the North. You know, we moved like 3,000 miles away from home, and it was a whole different mindset and groups of people. But, man, I don't want to be political on your podcast either, but this is kind of what I think is that I think that the world is very hungry for us to be unified and for solidarity, and they're hungry for that. Nice? And I think it just needs love, man. Yeah. I'm serious. No. I know this sounds cheesy and like I'm trying to be a hippie or something, but honestly, that's what serious. I want. I think people are hurting and they're reaching out, and the actions that we're seeing, the protests and all that thing, are people that their voices need to be heard. And it's really important for us, especially from my standpoint, as my children are going to inherit what we've created.
Right. True.
And I have 3 boys. They're 15, 17, and 19. And I just think about what kind of experience they're having through all this, from the pandemic to all the protests to, you know, my middle son, he's graduated this year. He didn't do prom. He didn't have graduation. He's going to college, hopefully, if they let him come to the campuses and stuff, and where he will be leaving, you know, home for the first time. But as far as from a cultural standpoint, is we've always tried to pass along the mentality that you treat everybody equal. You know, I think from a musical standpoint, I mean, there was one of my dear friends that was on Beale Street was a guy named James Govan, and he was a soul singer. You know, he was about big around as a matchstick. He wore a little captain's hat. He threw beads out in the audience. And he just always had women around him all the time. He'd have a booth, and there'd be 5 or 6 of them crawling all over him. You know, and I just thought he was the coolest dude in the world. And, you know, we didn't think about race. We were talking about music. We were like, I was telling him how much I loved him singing, you know, the sets that he was doing, the songs he picked, the horn player he just picked up. And, you know, and I think we were kind of mentored, kind of the people that were around us, like John Fry I talked to you about. He worked with Stax. He worked with Al Bell. Yeah. And I think they were there supporting each other and saying, hey, this is something amazing. When we get all this diversity in the room together, look what happens. Look at the songs that transcends time. Man, those songs are timeless, the things that they've created, the different perspectives, the different cultures. And we saw it in the Memphis Horns when we were with them. Wayne and Andrew were totally different. I mean, they couldn't have been physically any different. Wayne was short, a white guy, and Andrew was a big old tall black guy. But they traveled the whole world together, and they talked to us about their experiences. We laughed and loved them so much. And, you know, there's definitely, from a historical perspective, there's definitely things that about growing up in the South that there's parts of your heritage that you're not proud of. Sure. And that's hurtful. And, but hopefully we can be united and talk. Yeah. I think that's the hard part, is people just are uncomfortable about talking about it to each other. Yeah, no. But it's really, as cheesy as it sounds, it's just, this is about human beings, man. Yeah. This is us, and we're only here for a little while together. I mean, life is, and maybe it's because I'm older and I'm kind of in a reflective mode, you know, or something, but you realize how quickly it goes by. Absolutely. No. And just how insane it is to think of the place we are right now in society. Is just, no, it's definitely a crazy place. And again, I don't like to talk politics. Like I don't like to divide people, but what you're saying about bringing people together, I mean, that's kind of what I try to do with, I think, music. I think Tora Tora has fans of
probably all different people from all different kinds of background. I mean, you've toured all the country and the world.
From all over the world, and it's so amazing. But listen, that's the one thing about music. It's a universal language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a community. It's a culture. It gives you a sense of belonging, man. This is the most loyal fans, the people that love music, depending on whatever genre you're in. And it's just amazing. It's such a powerful force. Yeah. I mean, I can't even tell you on the phone how much it's affected my life, man. There's nothing in the world that's affected me like that.
Well, and that's what's so cool is that you can share that not only with your band and your music, but also now, I mean, if you're a teacher, you're obviously influencing young people as well and helping them influence. So it's really cool.
Fun.
Now,
I get so excited for them.
Now, what else? I always like to end with a charity. So I don't know if you had, that's another thing I like to do. You talked about being cheesy. Well, I'm real cheesy because I always end with a charity that the artist is passionate about. Is there something a charity that you work with or something that you're passionate about?
Yeah. Well, right now, it's something that I'm really so happy that I got part of is the Rockin Recipes for Autism.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's a volume 1 book. It's got people from Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, Quiet Riot, Stone Sour, Warrant, Poison, Great White, Queensryche, Skid Row, Toto, Dokken, Nova Rex, and everybody submitted recipes.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's online that you can go to and find it. There was a friend of mine that reached out to me that was putting this together, and his name is Kenny Wilkerson. And if you guys would like to find it, I'm trying to find. It's www.rockinrecipesforautism.com.
Okay.
You can go there and order the book. It's for a great cause. We wanted to raise awareness for autism. And anytime that we can be a part of anything that's charitable, we've worked a lot with St. Jude and over the years out of Memphis. There's somebody that's really close to our heart. And the Ronald McDonald House, of course, that helps the children that are in the hospital, that gives their families places to stay. So, but this Rockin Recipes for Autism was something Kenny approached me about, and so I put in the Southern recipe. It's round steak and gravy. So you guys will have to go check that out.
Okay. Yeah, great. That sounds great. Well, yeah, you've done some amazing things. You toured the world and played with some of the biggest bands, and you've had 5 videos on MTV. I mean, is there anything else that you have lined up for the future? I mean, I know it's got to be tough doing concerts with the coronavirus going on, but
yeah. Well, we're still. I'm doing some live streams right now.
Okay.
There have been Sunday sessions you can find me on Facebook doing that, where I want to stay in touch with you. I just did the Monsters of Rock live stream out of Cincinnati, so that was an hour set of some of the songs. You know, I pulled out some I'd never done before, so I was excited about that. But we're working on new material, working on a new record, and then we'll keep the EP going. We're going to be promoting that through the end of the year. So
okay,
you guys just keep in touch with me. I'd love to update you, man. When we get in the studio or something, maybe we can do another conversation.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on my show.
Take care of yourself. It was great talking to you. I appreciate the op.
All right, you too.
Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Well, there you have it. Anthony Quarter, singer of Tora Tora. What an amazing career. What a great band. Check out all their back catalog. And check out the new album, Bastards of Beale, and their new acoustic EP, Tora Tora Unplugged. And definitely follow Anthony on Instagram and social media. And the band is on social media as well. They have a website, of course. And follow them for updates. It sounds like there might be a part 2 to their acoustic EP. So check that for updates. You can follow me on social media as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode. My goal is always to entertain, educate, and inspire. So I hope that you learned something. I hope it was entertaining, and maybe even got a little bit inspired to do something. Go out there, make a change in the world, make a change in yourself. Maybe you want to be a musician or a teacher or lots of things that Anthony did that were inspiring. So I think good talk with him. What a great guy. Thank you for listening. If you like this, share it with a friend or hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more episodes. Until then, shoot for the moon and have a great day or night.